to be a good community member and how to submit bugs the right way.
Hi, how is everybody? So, TJ Van Tol. I am from Lansing, Michigan. I grew up in the Detroit area, so actually was close enough to get CBC over the air, so I feel like I'm at least a part Canadian. So I'm from Lansing, Michigan. I have two twin sons you can see there, and their mom is also a web developer, so they're pretty much doomed. But what you might care about for the purpose of this talk is I'm on the jQuery UI team, and I triage bugs for the project. And what that means is when new bugs come in, I'm usually one of the first ones to see them, take a look, see if they're actually valid bugs, see if they're reproducible, things like that. So I kind of want to tell a quick story. The application that I spend most of my time working on, I was getting ready to ship a feature. This feature was basically just a table where you could add rows, edit, delete, basic functionality. I was doing my last round of browser testing. Works in Firefox, works in Chrome, etc. When randomly I got everybody's favorite dialogue here that in IE8 the object doesn't support this property or method on line 4096, of course. So this sort of thing happens to us day in, day out. Not this exact circumstance, but something like this. So I want everybody to think about what they would do when they see this. So usually your first step is you go to Google, you type in something kind of like this, and you just hope that you get something that tells you the exact answer or a workaround or something like that. So no, you go through 1 or 2 Stack Overflow questions that may or may not be relevant. Then you end up on some web form from 2002, and if you're desperate enough, you might even try copying and pasting something from there to work around it. And this is kind of what we do. And if that doesn't work, if we're still stuck with this JavaScript and we don't know what to do, then our next step is we usually get pretty angry. Take a lot of grief for actually taking this picture instead of actually stopping this situation. So I figured I might as well use it. But we get upset. But then this is JavaScript and this is the web. And one of the great things about JavaScript is it's a very flexible language. So we can do some things that maybe we shouldn't do. So, for example, I could do things like this. Like, oh, my table row won't remove. Well, but I'll just catch that error and just hide it. And then if I wanted to avoid the JavaScript error, it's like, oh, I can use, I'll just browser sniff for IE8s and then just do it for them. Or, just refresh the page for IE8 and to get around the issue. And, we laugh when we see things like this, but everybody in this room has written code kind of like this or worse at some point. And in fact, hacks like this are like kind of the core of some big frameworks. If you think of things like the HTML5 shiv, allows you to use things like HTML5 elements in IE8, IE7, IE6. At its core, it's doing a document.create element on all these things. A document.create element section. All of a sudden, IE8 says, oh, yep, now sections can have children and you can style them, So it's actually kind of a testament to the language that you can do this sort of thing. Before I ripped JavaScript full time, I was a Java developer. And I can tell you that when something went wrong in Java, it was going to be not only a rough day, but you could have a rough week, month. You might have to fundamentally rethink what you're doing. So, as I said, this talk is about bugs and bug reports. So considering you can hack around this, and all those hacks did actually, work around the problem, why would you even bother to go ahead and submit a bug? Well, there's a couple reasons. The first is the, altruistic, make the world a better place. But it's kind of true. Open source libraries like jQuery, or really any project, depend on bug reports to keep them clean, keep them working. What is one of the main reasons we use jQuery? Because it just works. Well, it just works because it relies on this feedback coming back in. You can also learn a little something. Creating test cases, which I'm going to get into, is a debugging process that can help you with your day-to-day development. It's also kind of valuable to see how core developers, if you submit a bug report, how they attack a problem. And it's also a great way to get involved in the project itself. So you can get involved, start by submitting bug reports, and then from that point you can start to look at the bugs that are coming in, and then eventually start to work on fixing those bugs. And the final reason is to get your bug fixed. So I don't want to fork my code around for IE8 having this JavaScript error in jQuery. I'd rather just say move this table row. So to start, if you wanted to submit a bug report, so for this table row example, where can you go? So for jQuery, there's dedicated subdomains, bugs.jQuery.com and jQueryui.com that house their issue trackers. jQuery mobile, it's on GitHub. And just more generically, most big projects have some way of tracking issues. If you found like a browser bug, all the major browsers have some means of submitting bug reports. Some of these aren't, like IEs and Safaris and Operas even, aren't open to the public, but you can still submit them information. And then like Firefox, Chrome, those are completely open. You can see open bugs and such. So let's say you actually went to jQuery, bugs.jQuery.com, say, yep, I got a bug, I'm going to submit it. This is the first thing that's going to greet you, this giant red box. And that's because a lot of the stuff that comes into the bug tracker has some problems. And I'm going to go over some of these. So the first thing you want to do when you submit a bug is just do a quick search to see whether it already exists. And this may seem like common sense, but most people just don't do this. And it actually can be beneficial to you because if you are having a problem, you search the bug tracker, you might find a bug where there's a discussion on the issue. You might find, oh, look, there's a workaround that somebody already came up with, or look, this has already been fixed in a later version. So it's important to just do a quick check. So for my table row example, I'd go to bugs.jQuery.com, find a little search box, just search for things like IE8 table, IE8 table row, IE8 remove, things like that. In this case, I did that, didn't find anything relevant, so move on. The next thing is to use the latest versions. So if you're having a bug, there's a decent chance that somebody out there has already experienced the same bug, and it quite possibly has a fix that's already out there. So if you're having the problem, you can check, you just bring in the latest version real quick, see if it's still an issue. So jQuery and jQuery have versions out there that are basically just the most recent code in the master branch, so you can get the bleeding edge. And these are quick just to like throw in a script tag, see if the issue still exists. It's a real quick check that can save you a lot of time. And browsers like Chrome and Firefox have nightly builds of their browsers available, so running into some really strange issue in Firefox, not a bad idea to just check out the nightly build, see if it's still a problem. So let's say you've done that. So you've done a search, can't find it, latest version, still a problem. So your next and most important step, important enough for me to give it a red border, is to create an actual reproducible test case. And what that is the absolute minimum amount of code that you need to recreate the problem. So the basic process is, for my table row example, that was embedded in an application that had, 10,000 lines of JavaScript, thousands of lines of CSS. The table was a part of a rich application with thousands of lines of HTML. Nobody's going to want to debug that. Nobody knows what's going on in there. So you really want to isolate the problem down to what the core issue actually is. So the basic process for doing this is you remove some code, you refresh the page, and you see if it's still a problem. So for my example, it's a JavaScript issue, so the first thing I did was, well, let's just get rid of all the CSS, see if the issue still occurs. In this case it did, so refresh the page, take out something else. Start by taking the HTML out around it, and then start to get rid of some of the JavaScript. And this process isn't always easy. Lots of times this code can be embedded within server-side templating languages, have dependencies on servers, but it's really important that if you actually want the bug to get fixed and out there, that the problem gets isolated. Another thing too is you don't want to link to your live site. So hopefully you're not putting bugs into production first of all, but it also goes down to having a reduced test case, and there's lots of JSFiddle, JSBin, CodePen, there's some of the bigger ones, there's other ones, tools online to create test case, and they really help to be able to play with your test case, to really play with some of the variables and to get to the bottom of what's going on. So another example, and this was a fun one that came in to the jQuery UI. So this was an actual bug submission, and somebody submitted this bug and said, hey, I have this form, and if I turn it into a jQuery UI tabs widget, the text boxes, the values in the text boxes is getting chopped off. You can see like the bottom one is supposed to have localhost in it, and just randomly IE10's just slashing it off. So this is one where you just kind of go, what? So the HTML that they provided for it was this. And I apologize for those of you who can't read this, but that's kind of the point. There's a lot going on here. It's hard to isolate. You look at this, what do you think the problem is? There's a lot of moving pieces here. You know, could it be the fact that it's in a table? Could it be, oh, it has no padding? You know, what really is the core issue here? But actually, this really isn't that bad of a test case submission. There's only one line of CSS at the top, and there's only one line of JavaScript at the bottom. That's not bad. This is something that you could easily work with. So I kind of wanted to show how I'd attack this. And usually what I do for something like this, the input is kind of where the core issue seems to be. So I'd start attacking it from the outside in. So, for example, there's this form that's around everything. And I'm sure this form is vital to making this actual application work, this actual ASP application. But in this case, it seems irrelevant. So I'd remove this, refresh the page, see if it still happens. It does. And then basically from there, you just kind of repeat the same basic process. So the next thing I see is, oh, there's a table taking up a lot of space here. I don't think that's related to the core problem, so I'll remove that too. It's getting a little better, but you know, there's still two tabs here, two input boxes. So we can get rid of that too. And now this isn't bad. So this is something that you can kind of get what's going on here. There's a text box, there's some width applied to it. Bug's still happening, IE10's still chopping it off. So there's still a lot of excess stuff in here. You know, things like the max length seem like they might be a problem, you know, maybe something to do with the class. So, you know, just try removing this stuff, see what happens. And now we're getting at something that's pretty minimal. The last few things I changed on this one was, especially since it seems like this is possibly a CSS problem, you know, the padding and margin at the top there, try getting rid of that. And the last value in that input, for the same reason you use lorem ipsum text in a mock-up or a design, you kind of want to keep your test cases kind of neutral. So I just threw some lorem ipsum in there. And this was as small as I could get this. So you can see that all that's happening here is you have this input box, and you wrap it with a tabs widget, and randomly this bug is happening. Now what's interesting about this is that width turned out to be very important. If that width was removed, then the bug went away. And those are important things to note in a bug submission as well. If you find something that, oh, this seems to be the trigger for this, those are things that the people who actually look at the bugs are going to want to know about. So I said earlier that this art of reducing is something that can help you in your day-to-day development. Think of this from the perspective of a jQuery or jQuery UI developer. Where do you go from here? What is the actual problem here? And basically the process is exactly the same. Except this time, when we're developing this test case, we treat jQuery and jQuery UI as a black box. That if there's a problem that still exists, well then it happens within jQuery and jQuery UI. And when you're looking at it from the perspective of the developer on the libraries, then you're wondering, oh, is this a browser issue or is this an issue with jQuery? So this example, I was able to get it down to this and abstract it from jQuery altogether. Now this is a crazy bug. So if you look at the first three lines, the first three lines of HTML is really all you need to see here. And what happens is, if you have a width on the input, and then you apply a class to a parent of that input that changes the font size, IE10, for whatever reason, will chop off the text in the inputs. And that is one of the stranger bugs that I have ever seen. And if you give the input focus, it fixes itself, though. It just randomly comes back to life. So I got it down to this, and I sent this bug report to Microsoft, where some poor developer in Redmond got emailed this and had to figure out, essentially go through the same process, but this time with IE no longer being a black box. So back to my table row example. So after playing with that, I got it down to this. all you needed to do was have a click handler, an ID click handler that was on the document. And internally, when whatever element was removed, I don't even fully understand this, but when the element was removed, the event would propagate, and jQuery internally was trying to call getAttributeID on the document. Since document doesn't have a getAttribute method, thus it gives that warning in IE8. And part of this too is a learning experience. I mean, one of the things I did before submitting the bug report is I jumped into line 4096 of jQuery. It's like, okay, let's do this. Like, I'm gonna figure this out. And then, step out one level. It's like, okay, they're looping. Like, here we go. And then, one more level, and then you quickly realize that, like, I have no idea what's going on here. But it's a learning experience because this bug did get fixed, and I got to take a look at, how this was patched, and now I have a little better idea of how that part of the code is working. And it's important to no longer not think of these libraries as black boxes, because they're just JavaScript. You can alter them, or you can view into them, and it really helps not only with debugging, but just to know how these things work. So in this case, for this presentation, I'm going to use a bug that has a happy ending. This one worked out well. Had a reduced test case, bug got fixed, everybody's happy. And that's not always going to be the case. So it's important to remember to try not to be rude when you submit this. Try to remember that the people looking at this are, for the most part, volunteers. They're giving their own time. And it's not just this, but there's a good chance that if you submit a bug report that there's going to be some reason that the bug won't be fixed. Either it's not something that jQuery supports, or the project has decided that they don't want to go down the route that you would like them to, things like that. So try to be considerate of that. The jQuery project, like I said, is mostly volunteers working on it. Also, we get quite a few feature requests as well, and in general, the bug trackers aren't the greatest place to discuss large feature requests. Especially don't spend a whole lot of time working something out just to go to the bug tracker and it's like, guys, I got it. Like, I made the greatest component, you're gonna love it. Before you do that, you wanna try to ping somebody on IRC or hit somebody up in the forums, run it by them. Lots of times there's reasons that some of these some of these features have not been put into the library. So try not to spend too much time implementing something like bubble tooltips. The other thing is bug trackers aren't support. So we get quite a few features, or quite a few bugs that are saying, I added a tooltip to my site and it doesn't seem to be working for whatever reason. If you need help with support, the bug tracker isn't the place to go. You can go to Stack Overflow, you can hop on the forums, or you can jump on IRC, the jQuery channel. Those are the venues you want to go to. So, just to review, if you run into a bug, you run into a problem, and you think that you actually have a bug with the library itself, first thing you want to do, search for the bug on the bug tracker, see if you can find a duplicate, see if you can find something related to the problem you're having. If you don't find anything, then the next thing you want to do is bring in the latest version of the project, see if the issue still exists, and then after that, try to create a reduced test case that shows the issue with the minimal amount of code. And in that case, hopefully your bug can be fixed. So, thanks.